go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for swinging by. Tonight is season 2 premiere of the Libertarian Lowdown here on Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. So if you aren't familiar with what Libertarian Lowdown is, it is a series where I talk to different libertarians across the libertarian brand. Last season we started it off having Spike Cohen on, and it was just a wonderful season. And the last person I had on was Rebecca from up by Bemidji, and she was running for school board. And tonight we're supposed to be having Angela McArdle on. She is the chair of the National Libertarian National Libertarian Party Committee. So that kind of means she's the head honcho over there. And she's been having some internet connectivity issues tonight. So I'm hoping that she's able to get into studio so that I can bring her on. Before I get going too far, make sure that you are liking, commenting, and sharing this. Also, make sure that you are subscribed if you haven't subscribed yet. And, well, I was going to pitch my merchandise first is what I was going to do, so I'll just do that. So if you guys like merchandise and you're a fan of the show and you want to kind of support, you can order tumblers, travel tumblers. You can order mugs. You can order coffee. You can order shot glasses of many types. I've got glass. I've got powder coated black stainless steel interior, and then I got that leather wrapped stainless steel. And I have these beanies now. I have some very satisfied customers when it comes to beanies, people that have purchased them and love them, and they look really good. So this one's hand knit, which is why it's not for sale. But what I wanted to tell you guys while we're waiting for Angela to get in studio is I have an insider in the Minnesota House of Representatives who is... Oh, Angela's coming in. There she is. Angela, I see you. We'll bring you in just a second. This insider in the Minnesota House of Representatives is feeding me information, and I got information tonight. And it... Travis Johnson, shut your hole. I could say that you're just a farmer now. Yeah. Anyway, this insider at the Minnesota House of Representatives told me tonight that new legislation was being introduced by Lee Fink or Finke. Fink. I'm going to go with Fink. And this new legislation, and we're going to be doing two deep dives of navigating the Northwoods here pretty soon. One about the red flag legislation that's coming up. Travis, chair of my own party. We're going to be doing the red flag legislation, and then we're going to be doing one on this as it goes through the Public Safety Committee. Lee introduced legislation that would make it, how is this worded? Legal to knowingly transmit the AIDS virus in the state of Minnesota. Legalizing the transmission, knowingly transmitting the AIDS virus in Minnesota. And I don't care if you're libertarian, I don't care if you're conservative, Republican, paleocon, paleo-libertarian. I don't care if you're a moderate Democrat. That should concern you. That there are going to be legal protections in place for people who knowingly transmit a virus that is deadly. Like literally deadly. Not like coof deadly, but literally deadly. Especially when you put it in with the treatments that came up for it under a certain particular doctor who is now retired, and everybody likes to pick on him for the ouchie. But anyway, yeah. So once again, if you guys are interested, merchandise, you can email me at mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. Let me know what you're after. You can head over to Subscribestar. You can join me there, pick a level of support. And also, this is going to be a rapid fire because Angela is a mom and she has children to take care of. Angela, thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine. I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you're. Thanks for resetting your router.
Oh, yes.
I have to do that constantly with mine. So, technology is supposed to make our lives better, and all we've discovered over the last few years is that all these things that are supposed to give us more liberty and freedom and make our lives better have just worked their way into being far more complicated.
Yeah.
So, you have moved to the land of freedom in the Southwest.
That's very true.
And because you did leave the left, one of the two left coasts, and moved to the Lone Star State.
Yep.
And how'd that transition go for you?
It was pretty seamless. So I actually grew up in Texas, in mostly East Texas, but I lived as a small child in Deer Park, Pearland, Houston, Pasadena, San Antonio. I kind of lived all over. And I moved to California with my family as a teenager when my dad's job relocated there. So we'll just consider it a very long failed experiment. So when people ask me where I moved from, I'm like, Longview, East Texas. That's how. Yeah.
Well, you cut your teeth politically in California, though.
Yes, the hardest place to do it. So
I noticed. I was reading up on you, and you had a few campaigns where you were like one of like 300 people all running for the same seat.
One of 26 or 27 candidates. I'm trying to remember the exact number with the write-ins. There were a handful of write-ins. Yeah.
I was exaggerating to make a point, but
Oh, but the non-exaggerated number is practically the same. It might as well be.
Might as well be. So when did you come to libertarian ideals and principles, and did you even understand what you were arriving at?
So I guess you'd say it's like a play in 3 acts. So I grew up in a fairly traditional conservative home in the South, fairly, and
which is like hard right compared to where I live now. So
yeah. Well, a little bit about that. So my dad is a minister, and he has also usually worked with missionary companies that do like nonprofits that do work overseas. And he pastored what's called a Christian and Missionary Alliance church. Mm-hmm. And so we were in a very traditional conservative home, but we had a lot of international connections. So, and the missionary emphasis, they were usually going to countries where it was illegal to be a Christian. It's very dangerous. Yeah. So that, coupled with his work at a missionary radio company, I was constantly, as a small child, introduced to people who had fled or been persecuted by their governments, usually for being a Christian. But absolute horror stories. I've met people who've been like crawled out of Pol Pot's killing fields, barely made it out alive. All kinds of incredible stories. People like getting out of gulags, surviving persecution in communist China because they were not part of the officially recognized Christian church in China, the one that's aggressively
patriotic 4-shelf church. Yeah, it's like something really weird like that.
So I have always been distrustful of government. Everyone in my family has, and I think we've had pretty good reason to be.
The heck you say?
Right. But when I was a teenager, we moved to California, and I met people just, socially, and was explaining to someone my political views. And I was like, I'm like a Republican, except I don't care that much about gay marriage or weed. I don't think that we should care about those things. And he said, oh, well, you sound more like a libertarian. So I was 17 and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm a libertarian then. Like, I was like, oh, I've heard of that. It sounds close to Republican. And then a few years later, I read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, which completely imploded my worldview. I was really interested in banking and finance and kind of some conspiratorial stuff. And that's what this book is about. It's about the origins of the Federal Reserve. And it just completely blew my mind, freaked me out, ruined my week. You know, I was just hiding in my house, paranoid, like, oh, we're all going to die. Everything, the whole world is a lie. It's so much worse than I thought. It's not just, you know, gay marriage and weed. Oh, the dollar, oh, it's going to collapse. And a few years later than that, I heard about Ron Paul when he was running for president. And then I was like, oh,
always downhill after that, isn't it? You're just,
well, I was like, everybody else is also paranoid that the world is going to collapse because of the Federal Reserve. I'm not the only one. So that was how I became, you know, level by level, like more libertarian. And eventually I got connected with the Libertarian Party.
So you get connected with the Libertarian Party, you start to run for office as a libertarian candidate, and you know, and I think it's fair to say, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, it's a hard row to hoe as a libertarian to, you know, to be taken seriously as a candidate, because not very many people look outside of the I don't even think of it as, you know, my son asked me, he's like, who do you have on tonight? And I said, oh, the chair of the National Libertarian Party. He goes, well, that's got to be a big deal. Are you nervous? I'm like, no, she's just a person.
Yeah.
But he said, so the Libertarian Party, you know, how big is that? And I'm like, well, it's technically the third largest party in the United States. And I in my mind, I'm saying, no, actually, it's the second largest, because you can't tell a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats anymore. I've used this analogy many times, and if you're a reader, I'm sure you've read Animal Farm, but the closing scene of Animal Farm, of all the animals who weren't quite as equal as the pigs are standing outside the back window, looking in, watching the pigs sit at a table, wear clothes, and, you know, drink and play cards with the humans, which all these things were verboten. And as they're looking around, the faces all look the same, and you couldn't tell the difference between the pigs and the people anymore. That's the uniparty. You can't tell a difference with them at all. And so I think you're actually the chair of the second largest party, and it's, I think it, from what I'm seeing as an outsider without a political home right now, you guys are growing faster than any other party I've ever seen. And I saw that really accelerate with the national convention this year, that you guys really made some huge growth moves right after the convention. And I'm wondering, because you came into it as a Mises Caucus endorsed candidate.
For the national convention, yes.
Yeah.
I've been in the party since before the Mises Caucus existed.
Right. But you came in as a candidate for chair, as a Mises Caucus endorsed candidate.
As a person who was on the Mises Caucus executive board.
Right.
Very, very, very much aligned. Like, I am the thing that they align with.
Right. And I chalk a lot of that growth up to people who are on the periphery of the Republican Party, or even more traditional Democrats who feel homeless.
Yep.
Looking over to the Libertarian Party and saying, of all the other parties that are out there that I could look at, the Libertarian Party, under the auspices of the Mises Caucus, which I know has been marginalized by some as being, well, it's just a bunch of conservatives masquerading as libertarians, and, you know, whatever. But they're looking at the Mises Caucus aspect of the Libertarian Party and saying, I can identify with these folks, and we might have some differences on some philosophical issues, but these people represent me a lot more. Do you think that's what really ultimately led to the Mises Caucus sweep of the convention this year?
I think that's part of it. I think there were a handful of things. One is, we all rallied behind Ron Paul. And so it was the Ron Paul Revolution 2.0 that really kicked it off. And that's going to, it's a lot of like Liberty Caucus ex-Republicans, but
Mm-hmm.
but he reached out to a lot more people than that. He reached out to people who were non-voting anarchists. They had never voted previously in their life. He reached out to a lot of anti-war lefties too. And I've gotten to meet a lot of those people over the last couple of months as I've been organizing this big anti-war rally in DC. Turns out that the principled anti-war left, there's little remnants of them, they all love Ron Paul too. So, and some of those people were already in our caucus. So I've gotten to kind of see like what is the real demographic makeup and hear everyone's personal stories. But ultimately, like you're not going to grow any movement unless you have something solid to rally around. And it was very easy for us to say, Ron Paul is our standard bearer. This is the standard of political discourse and principle that we think should be at the forefront of our movement, and this is what we want, the world to look like. People love that, and they got on board with it.
You hear a lot of like the left that hates libertarians say, and I've had this thrown at me. Well, you're a libertarian. I'm like, well, actually, I'm technically not. I mean, I'm a little L libertarian, if you will. But you libertarians are just angry Republicans without anybody to talk to, and then Republicans, the people who I call them normicons, think they're conservative, think they're traditionalists, and really all they are is about 15 to 20 years behind the Democrats.
Totally.
And they're like, oh, libertarians are a bunch of lefties. And I'm like,
whatever.
But at the same time, the last few years, the Libertarian Party has had some struggles with wokies and and others that had come into the party and were really pushing a left-wing agenda. And that is a turnoff for some. And then, of course, and then you've got people who think they're libertarian, but then describe the Libertarian Party as taking the best of the left and the best of the right and mixing them together to come up with a party. And I'm like I don't, nobody wants that. That's not what people are looking for. They want something different. They're not looking for an amalgamation or a mixing bowl full of a lot of random ideas. They're looking for, as best as you can within a party, like you said, something to rally behind, something to stand behind. And I think that's what I'm hearing from people who are leaning towards the Libertarian Party right now is they actually represent what's going on in my mind. What are you guys going to do to capture that as a Mises Caucus and as a new party? What are you going to do to capture that and carry it forward?
So we're working right now with the dissident left, honestly, with a group called the People's Party, which is a minor party that represents ex-Bernie supporters. We're putting together a huge anti-war rally in DC on President's Day weekend, February 19th. Because apparently it's really difficult for the average person to speak out against Americans' involvement in the war in Ukraine. It's a proxy war between the United States and NATO and Russia. Ukraine is in the middle of it, and we should not be sending our tax dollars over there. We should not be arming this country. We should not be helping to get us all closer to nuclear war. That's a terrible thing. And the regular Republican Party, there's a handful of people speaking out against it, but most of all, the GOP they're afraid to speak out. It's really embarrassing. Or if they are, they're speaking out against this one just to be contrarian to the Democrats, and they'd happily see us go to war with China. Everybody's obsessed with China. So yeah, that's one thing that we're doing. I think another thing that we need to start to tackle, well, inflation, that's a huge thing. We need to be talking about inflation and how that hurts everybody and just average people. But another thing that is less sexy, but I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about a lot lately, is regulation and how it is crushing business. It's like when you're caught between regulatory capture and inflation, it's just hopeless. You're trying to further your industry, you're trying to innovate, you're trying to do what you can to survive, and there's no way to make forward progress. You encounter roadblock after disappointment after roadblock. So these are some things that I'd like to see the National Party start to spearhead and tackle over the next year.
When it comes to the inflation question, what do you think the solution that the libertarians are going to be able to offer to really help combat that?
Bitcoin. We need to get, man. So what I would love to do is say, let's go back to the gold standard. Let's abolish the Federal Reserve, and I'll never stop saying it. But that's a very difficult battle. And in order to really help people understand why we should abolish the Federal Reserve, you've got to show them how damaging it is. And you've also got to get them away from it and show them that there's a better solution. And that means getting away from fiat money. We can't be reliant upon anything that could just be printed into oblivion. That is not a good, sustainable financial policy. So I've been advocating a strong relationship with the Bitcoin community.
How do you answer the fiat question when it comes to Bitcoin? Because a lot of people don't see Bitcoin, and this is less about technology, obviously, and more about the fiduciary aspects of it. They see Bitcoin as really nothing more than an electronic version of the fiat dollar.
Oh, well, because Bitcoin
that's what
Yeah.
they see.
It can't be continually printed. There's a stop. There's a hard stop where you can never mine another Bitcoin. It doesn't exist. So if that were the case with the US dollar, that would be great. We wouldn't obviously be in the situation that we're in. We'd still be going to the movies and getting a ticket and a popcorn and a soda for a nickel, like our grandparents. But that's not reality right now. Gold standard. I would love to get us back on gold. However, we were able to get off of gold pretty easily. That's really terrible, right? What was it, 1971? We went off the gold standard. So it's not as secure and safe as we would like it to be. It's sort of like the Constitution, right? I think it was the best contractual governance document that has ever existed. And that poor Constitution, it's still not enough, because look at where we are now. Like, out of all the documents, it's the best one, but still too many pitfalls.
When you take a step back and you look at the general feel of society, it's impossible to deny that they're trying to push us into a culture war.
Yeah.
They're doing their level best to pit every single person against every other person, not just left versus right, black versus white, or whatever you're gay versus straight, any of that. Yep. They're literally trying to pit every single one of us against every other person around them.
Yep.
And what from your perspective, what's the libertarian solution to battling that?
Single issue coalitions. It's really important. So I'm doing it right now. I'm working with the People's Party, Action for Assange, United for Peace, Peace in Ukraine, all these very left anti-war groups who do not agree with us on economics. They do not. I am having conversations with literal communists. I don't care, because we got to find some way to communicate with each other and view each other as human beings. And it looks like it's taken bringing us to the brink of nuclear war to make it happen. And I don't want to see anybody blown up. I don't want to see nuclear winter and fallout, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have conversations with other people where we view each other as human beings with, like an intrinsic value. And that's the human life, and that it's worth saving, and that there is something redeemable and worthwhile about humanity. And it helps us when we have to go through these intense conflicts and crises. Like, that's so terrible, but it's sort of like a refiner's fire. You scrape the scum off the top so that you can get to the gold. And we're seeing that we can actually unite and align around some of our higher values. We just have disparate ideas about how we want to get there. So have values-based conversations with people, find things that you agree with them on, and focus really hard on that and commit to it. And then you can break through a lot of BS that way.
What about the Libertarian Party at the national level is going to cause it to be successful because it's got to do something in this next presidential election.
Yeah.
2024 has got to be a big year for you guys. It has to. You have to have the right candidate up there, and I know
Yep.
everybody's talking, Dave Smith and Mosh Toure on a ticket. There's Mike Termatz in there. I've had Mike on. In those, having a good candidate is great, but the Libertarian Party is also very much focused on small, grassroots, local level elections,
Yep.
and has committed to spending the majority of their money on candidates at that level. How are you going to? Well, we've got Bull in here. Bull, has launched his party, and one of the reasons that he's done that is because he wants ballot access through a statewide national election. And there are people who are going to say, you can't, if you're not spending money on some really key national elections and you're not getting enough vote percentage there, you're not going to get ballot access almost anywhere. And that is definitely a hindrance to candidates at any level of having to jump through all of these hoops to get ballot access without a big party pushing them. How are you guys going to combat that? What are you going to do to help people across the board as they run for office?
So the presidential candidate is basically like a complementary race to down ballot tickets, and we have to start having a more national approach. People are like, "Oh, I don't want that to be centralized." Well, I'm not literally telling anyone what to do in their state affiliate, but I am highly suggesting that you work with national so that we can work together to make this happen. And that also means that you need a presidential candidate who's willing to play ball and have some skin in the game and help state and county affiliates too. The way that it needs to work is that the presidential candidate needs to be inspirational. They need to inspire people. They need to work hard. They need to tour the country and get people excited about the Libertarian Party and to get active. When they get active, what can they do? They can get involved locally. They can help collect signatures for state level candidates or the presidential candidate. They can run for local office. Local and presidential should be complementary, and then it kind of helps you fill in the rest. Because I know that it sounds like not very sexy to run for city council when you want to run for Senate or Congress, whatever, but you have such an opportunity to make a difference at the local level. You really do. And that's where you stack political capital so that when you want to run for higher office, people will take you seriously. Or when you need to go and collect signatures for your presidential candidate or to get ballot access, you're like, well, I'm on city council or I'm on a city board of transportation or the water board. People do take you more seriously that way. So it all needs to work together like an orchestra.
Well, and a strong candidate at a city council level or in a mayoral position or at a county commission or something like that, strong candidates there holding the right views, especially
Yeah.
constitutional originalism, having those kind of views can really intervene against the state and the federal state
Yes.
by practicing nullification in their own communities.
Yeah.
And
And
I know
yes.
that's big because you guys have Tom Woods in your midst, and he loves to
Yeah.
talk about nullification and whatnot. So
It's so like we found out like the profound difference it can make if you have some good principled people on city council while you live in a tyrannical blue state. Like during lockdowns, there were cities and counties who were just like, nope, we're not going to comply. We're not going to enforce those orders. We don't care. Really critical. Also, let's say you get elected to city council and you're one of 10 or 12 people. Think about how much more influence you have there as opposed to being one of 435 people in Congress. It's huge. You get another ally. If you get it, like, it's so much easier to find 5 good people out of 10 than it is to find, 300 good people out of 435 or whatever. Like, it's just an easier thing to do. And you gain so much experience too.
yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is like a friend is watching this, and she said local races are the most important and is a good way to start turning the tide with nullification. Americans need to stop thinking DC should run their lives. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss is that you don't have to run for a local office or a relatively local office with the intention of thinking you're going to end up at the state senate or the state house or at the federal level. You can literally stay there and be as effective for your entire political career at that local level if you can bring other people with you. And like you were saying, you kind of build, if you will, capital to then, if you choose to move on,
Yep.
you can.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
how, no matter who you guys end up nominating, how are you going to present a party platform that is going to be both poignant and pointed, but not alienating a certain segment of either side who might be looking at coming in? You know, because for a lot of conservatives are getting tired of the GOP, and I told you that, you know, when I first contacted you about coming on, I'm done. I'm done. I can't. I look at the GOP now, and I get sick. But there are some people in the GOP would love to be in the Libertarian Party, but they wonder what the position is on abortion. You know, where does the party come down on abortion? I mean, I know where the Libertarian Party right now comes down on gun control.
Yeah.
But where do you come down on something like abortion? Where do you come down on marriage? You know.
Okay, so that's a really good question. We took the abortion plank out of the platform in May. It was very controversial. For the longest time, the party has been, they would say that they had no position, but most people read it as though it was pro-choice. And so we just removed the plank. At this point, candidates and party members are free to have their own opinion about abortion. So if you're in a conservative state, if you're a passionate pro-life person, you can be a libertarian, you can run under our name, and that can be your position. If you don't agree with that, if you're pro-choice, if you're in a metropolitan area and that's your view, whatever, you can run with pro-choice too. It's up to you. And we think that that's really the best position for the party to have on it, is because we've been fighting over this back and forth for 50 years. It's a fruitless fight. People are not going to agree on it. Now, you know, I've got a 5-week-old baby. I am not someone who goes out and pushes abortion. I think it's disgusting, a barbaric practice. But ultimately, it's up to the individual.
Sarah says she could have asked a question, but she chose to show for me instead. She says hit the like while we're live. Help TC fight the algorithm. Yes, do that. Now, Sarah, do you want to ask a question? Since you gave me a super chat, I'll let you do that. You can put your question in, and we'll give Angela a chance to answer. A mom-to-mom question from 2 libertarians. That would be amazing. When you look at the Supreme Court decision that struck down Roe v. Wade, and of course all the outrage because everybody said it was settled law, and and accused the justices of lying about it, would you, as the chair now of the Libertarian Party, look at that and say that was actually a really strong decision on the striking down of Roe v. Wade? Or because I looked at it. Go ahead.
It was a poor decision. It was poorly written. That was like a terrible legal argument. My background is litigation. I have to read judicial decisions all the time.
You're talking about the original decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was terrible. It should have been overturned just on those grounds alone. It's a trash opinion. And oh man, I have a whole long rant about the Supreme Court. We look at these people, we revere them as though they are like gods among men, that they are the best legal minds in the universe, that, like their word is the law. And I got to tell you, like, some of those decisions that they write are terrible. Terrible. Who is it? Is it Cato? Ilya Soman, who I don't agree with 90% of the time. He has a really good Supreme Court review that he does every year. He's a Cato Institute fellow. and he does a good job of ripping them apart. You get all these people who are elected and appointed to positions, like they churn out trash opinions just like the average person. It's just that they have this like authority behind them. So we think that they're brilliant. I promise you they're not. The Supreme Court justices are not brilliant.
I'm like, no, well, compared to some of the people I know, they are, but there's a good portion of the people that I know, but I think it's because of how we have, like in our lifetimes, and I'm older than you, but throughout our lifetimes, we have really looked over there and said, well, once they make a decision, it's got to be constitutional, because that's what they're making all of their decisions on, and
Garbage.
they're really not. In fact, most of the time, what it comes down to is they're actually going off of other cases
Yes.
and other decisions made by even other courts.
Yes, and a lot of those were terrible decisions.
Yep.
For example, in 1905, Jacobson v. Massachusetts authorized vaccine mandates based on smallpox. And a lot of these cowardly losers shot down a lot of anti-lockdown and anti-mandate lawsuits based on that terrible ruling from 1905. Come on. Come on. Like, I'm telling you, these people, even the good ones, they have some trash opinions, and they're not thinking hard. They're absolutely cowardly. They don't have the guts to say, you know what, that ruling from 115 years ago is bad. Shame on them.
So you would be in agreement that just because the Supreme Court makes a decision doesn't mean it's always constitutional?
Correct.
Oh, okay, good.
Correct.
You would not believe the looks I get when I tell people that, Angela. They're like,
I know. It's people
how
don't
dare
understand.
you? How would you guys address the issue of marriage? So we have the new marriage. What is it? The Respect for Respect for Marriage Act or whatever it was. How do you address that as a small government, small state party? How do you address that without alienating both sides at the same time? Because I look
Right.
at it and I say, I think it opens a door to the potential for really bad consequences
Yeah.
for a lot of individuals in their states, even though it technically provides protection for strong religious uh,
Yeah.
convictions. I I look at the way it's written, and I think that particular act alone is maybe the scariest I've seen in a long time, because I think it does open up the door to the federal government telling states, you will do this and you will enforce this
Right. Right.
across the board. How would the Libertarian Party respond to that right now?
I mean, with the current makeup of the Libertarian Party, we lean towards states' rights and keeping government out of marriage altogether. Marriage licenses have not always been a thing. It was not always a thing. That's a relatively new invention throughout history.
Right.
Uh, they're not necessary, in my opinion. One of the big reasons people do get them is for tax breaks and for other, like medical situations. So one thing that I do think is really messed up is before gay people were allowed to get married, if one of them had terminal cancer or was dying, there are certain circumstances where they won't let anyone in the room to see you unless they're immediate family or you're married to them. And that's messed up. You've had like a gay partner for 35 years and you can't see him when he's dying of cancer. That's gross. So I totally understand wanting to give people those rights, because that's really critical. But I would much prefer to see the state completely taken out of marriage. I think that it's also weaponized in family court, usually against men, sometimes against women, depending on the judge, but usually against men. Um, and there's all kinds of alimony and things that are just abused, and a lot of it comes from marriage licenses. People should be responsible and make their own agreements, and not have to rely on the state all the time.
You've never been asked any of these questions before, I'm sure. Um, So Sarah's going to take advantage of asking a question. She said, I would ask Angela her thoughts on the school system. It's in such shambles. Where do we start getting our children the education they need without the propaganda? Charter schools, tax vouchers. I'm going
Yeah.
to just throw out there that TC's position is abolish public education, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of options. So I would love to see the Federal Department of Education abolished, because that hasn't been in existence for very long either. I believe it was the Carter administration that brought that about. Absolute useless trash. Why would someone in DC be an expert in how someone in Oregon should educate their children? The hell do they know? Nothing. But short of that, you've got charter school options. Do it. It's a lesser of two evils. Absolutely. You can homeschool. You can do private schools, although a lot of the times those teachers where do they get educated? Public schools and universities, academia that is absolutely infested with far left, super woke garbage that kills our kids, sometimes literally. Homeschooling, I think, is the best way to go, and that's what I'm going to do. But I also understand that there are a lot of parents that are in situations right now. It's like, don't assign blame. It is what it is, right? They're not able to homeschool their kids. Let's just help them out of that situation and get out of the crisis. I would say charter schools are a huge step in the right direction, especially for parents who've got themselves in situations where they can't homeschool.
So Bull asked. I'm gonna shorten his question up because I don't know who all these people are. But Bull asked, how is the Libertarian Party, the National Libertarian Party, going to get over the hump and be taken seriously and overcome some of the stigmas? And I mean, and that there are stigmas.
Oh yeah,
it
takes time. So this is the painful answer, right? But that's okay, because sometimes we need a dose of painful truth. We have to adopt a low time preference strategy, which means we set goals far into the future and we work diligently to accomplish them. What the Libertarian Party has done in the past is it's like chasing the dragon, right? You're trying to get that next hit, that next fix. So every 2 years, we're trying to win the presidency or get some crazy thing passed, and that's not how this works. The left took over most of our institutions and political realm over a period of 60 years, 65 years. It took a long time. And so the Libertarian Party is going to take a long time to make progress and also to rehabilitate its image, because we have been a clown show in the past. It's unfortunate, but our ideas are really solid. They're really good, especially when you lead with the best ones. So that's what we're going to do. But I'd ask everyone to please be patient. It's going to take a while for that embarrassing stuff to drop further down in the algorithm, so to speak.
When you look at the party going forward, do you see the Mises Caucus gaining momentum and gaining steam? And on the maybe in front of answering that way, can you give us a short synopsis exactly of what the Mises Caucus is and who Ludwig von Mises was?
Well, Ludwig von Mises was a brilliant economist who basically fled Europe during Nazi occupation, came to the United States, and shared his vision in the economic realm, and has inspired a lot of other great thinkers like Murray Rothbard and Lou Rockwell and Bob Murphy. And we've got the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama right now that helps to proliferate his teachings and inspire more people to adopt Austrian economics. Austrian economics is really about human action, and it says that economics should really be measured by human action and praxeology, which is a big word for human action. And it shouldn't be governed by central planning and government. Keep government away from that. It's really more focused about entrepreneurs. So, that's a little bit about Ludwig von Mises. The Mises Caucus really wants to help further those ideas politically. And we think that there are also some other implications for those ideas, like praxeology and human action. We see it manifest in psychology. We see it manifest culturally. We believe that, things like identity politics and war and simping for a lot of the things that conservatives don't want to confess our socialism, but are. We think that stuff is bad. And we need to let human beings like govern their own lives and stay away from central planning and the influences of central planning, which I think that a lot of that woke stuff is really like, it's, I don't want to say that it's government psyops, but they're very, very opportunistic tools to use government control, you know, like removing the man from a family, and then who replaces the man? Oh, the state. The state runs your family. Stuff like that. So, you know, we want to push a lot of these ideas.
Do you think that's going to propel the party forward?
Yep.
Going forward, the same way that it's really seemed to have an impact on growth this year alone. Well, for the last however months since the convention.
Yeah, I do think it is, because people want an actual solution. They're hungry for change. They're burned out on watching Republicans take the knee for people like Kevin McCarthy. They don't like that. They're mad about this stuff. People are mad. They're broke, and then you're gonna print our dollar into oblivion and then send it overseas to Ukraine. And Republicans are going to be like, all right, I guess so. Like, that sucks. That's not good. So you need someone to stand up for people, and you need someone to also be culturally relevant at the time. We're working on doing that as well. So, you know, the Mises Caucus is doing their own thing, you know, and I'm doing my thing kind of separately from the National Party, but it's very complementary. And the Mises Caucus is really what got us into our position right now. So I'm excited about the future, because now you've got two, not one, but two powerhouses working to achieve kind of the same vision.
Going forward, I want to ask this one carefully. I don't do that very often. I don't ask questions carefully. Normally I just throw them out there. Going forward, and knowing that short of just some sort of miraculous intervention from some, you know, otherworldly power, whatever you might call it at this time in your life, how much time do you think it's going to take for you guys to really capture a seat like the presidency or the governorship of a state?
Oh, presidency, I mean, that's like more than 20 years out.
Okay.
But what's not more than 20 years out is the relevancy of the presidency. Does that make sense? I think that institution is becoming further delegitimized every election cycle, like dramatically. I don't think governorship is that far out if we play our cards the right way and continue to have our act together.
Where do you see your best chances with something like a governorship?
Probably a smaller state, Wyoming, maybe New Mexico, not Arizona. Arizona is a hot mess. One of the Dakotas, Montana. Montana is a great state. I love Montana.
I used to live there. I love it.
Yeah, places like that. Now, you never know. You could pull something off weird. Someplace like Vermont or Hawaii. They're very, very far left, but the Republican Party has also abandoned them. So sometimes weird opportunities pop up.
What about New Hampshire?
New Hampshire's great. It's possible. Now, in their last election cycle, Liberty Caucus Republicans took it because the Free State has a little bit of a different strategy. And I think it only works there because it's unique to New Hampshire's culture. New Hampshire is unlike any other place in the country. So everybody moves there for the Free State Project, and they run under any ticket to try to get elected. So they'll run Republican, they'll run Democrat, they'll run Libertarian. They don't care. They're like, we're just running to take it by any means necessary. So the LP is not, I'm not 100% sure if the LP is best situated to win there first.
Do you guys do you support what the Free State Project is doing? Do you think it's it's a tenable and valuable position for others to start looking at?
I think it's a wonderful experiment, and I support it in that capacity. And if other people want to do the same thing, I think they need to do it on a much smaller scale, like try to make a Free Cities project. In fact, there is an organization that I've spoken with about that. can't remember their name all of a sudden. Titus is the guy who I've been speaking with, so it was so fantastic. But yeah, there is an organization that's working on a free cities project. A county might be a cool thing to do, but I wouldn't split the resources between two states. I'd keep that concentrated in New Hampshire.
Till they get a lot of traction and take over that state.
Yeah, then we can start somewhere else.
Okay, I got what you're saying. If you were going to assess your party right now, what's your biggest weakness? What do you think is hurting you the most?
We still have some kind of rabid haters and dysfunction that we need to clean up. I think that the Reno reset.
You mean within the party?
Yeah. I would say that more than 3/4 of it is good and solid, but we got to be vigilant about cleaning house and cleaning up the rest of it. And just organizational maintenance. Like a lot of it is just boring, unsexy stuff. But I would say that the Reno reset was like when you're watching a horror movie and you think you get to the end because the villain dies. You're like, oh, I'm so relieved. And then you're like, wait, there's like 30 minutes left in the movie. And you realize, oh, there's still time for that thing that I thought was dead to pop up and try to stab me in the chest. Like we're in that like 30 minutes. So we have to like make sure that we continue on our trajectory, that we're guarded, that we're doing everything that we can to maintain basically control of the organization for a few more years until everything is cleaned up and also functional. Because it's not just about haters, it's a history of dysfunction. Like not understanding best practices, not having a strategic plan and a solid vision, everybody not being professional, all that stuff. There are so many, we thought the Mises Caucus, they would take over and we would be so unprofessional. That is, nothing could be further from the truth. We're the ones up working long hours, documenting processes, going through Scrum, instituting project management, doing postmortems. Like that's really our bread and butter right now. It's not, doesn't sound very fun to the outside, but we're basically fine-tuning our processes to make sure that what we do is efficient. And if it's not, it doesn't work, you got to discard it and try something else.
I think one of the most poignant speeches from your guys' convention this year came from the mind of Spike Cohen. And the speech that he delivered on the eve of the voting was, okay, those of you on the left, if you win, you have to recognize that there are people over here on the right that you're going to need to work with if you guys want to be successful. People on the right, and I'm just using that vernacular. People on the right, you're going to have to work with the people on the left if you win. You cannot, do basically what you're saying, which is with all the hostility. Have you seen a lot of bridge building happening, or was there a lot of anger and vitriol when the sweep happened, and did a lot of the people that were more on the left kind of take their toys and go home, and has that hurt the party?
It's been both. So a lot of people took their toys and went home, and there was a smaller chunk that stayed and tried to rain, chaos and hellfire down on us. And it's really been on me to set the tone and say, I'm not going to get nasty with people on social media. I don't have time for that. But I'm going to deal with this stuff decisively and very aggressively to set a standard so that other people don't get bright ideas and think, oh, we could just push them around. They don't have a backbone. Like we do. We do, and I absolutely do defend our assets. To the extent that it's hurt the party, it's been aggravating because it's taken away some of my time. And time is a valuable resource. But I've been very creative with how I've dealt with things, and been really financially responsible with the way I've dealt with it. I took a week off. I had a baby just 5 weeks ago. Took a week off from work, but I didn't have real maternity leave, and I went back to work right away. And the party is better for it. So when haters and sucky people or CIA, FBI operatives, whatever, feds try to take us on, good luck, because it's not like we're just sitting around and going to let you do it.
Do you see I heard a lot of people talking about this that are more aligned with the Mises side coming out of it, saying we can't be having the celebratory dance where we're rubbing people's face in it, and yet there
Yeah,
were some that did, and I saw that as incredibly detrimental,
I
uh,
agree.
and was hoping to see it reined in. And I haven't seen much of it now over the last few months so I do think it was reined in, but there is that faction in there still, and I know Dave Smith. Did he go? Was he on with Rogan or was he on with Tim Pool? I can't remember. He made
He's
some
been
sort
on
of
both.
yeah, but
Yeah.
he made some challenge on the show and about people joining in the registrations. Like I think skyrocketed, like something like 20 or 30,000 people
Oh,
in a very short period of days.
with Joe Rogan, I don't think it was that high, but we did see a huge spike. We did get a spike in registration after his Joe Rogan appearance.
Because he
We
kind of
usually,
made a challenge. If he hit a certain number of registrations, he'd announce officially, and that
yeah.
Maj would be his running partner, his running mate. So that'd be interesting. um, what are you guys doing then to actually build bridges for the people who are more on the left that have stayed behind and have calmed down?
Well, the anti-war rally and showing them that we can work with people who are on the left outside of the party. I mean, that's a huge thing. Also, if people are willing to bury the hatchet and show up and do the work, then we're willing to work with them. Like that's, like Chase Oliver, who ran for Senate, was not very complimentary of us. And I had tons of media interviews about him. They want to talk to him, but they also want to talk to me explicitly because I'm the chair of the National Party. I didn't trash him. I said nice things about him every single time.
Where was he running?
Georgia, the Senate runoff. He was the one that was blamed for getting Herschel Walker kicked out, or for his loss, for getting what's his name, Raphael Warnock elected.
No,
So it's like you just gotta let people know you by the fruits of your labor.
Herschel did that to himself.
Oh, I know. The guy was like incoherent. He had a long rant about vampires. Like just like, in addition to all of his like family court drama and his child freaking out on him on social media and lying about who knows so many things. Don't do that. That guy looked like he would have come out of the LP 10 years ago.
Well, there it is, folks. She just said it. Yep. So,
That's right. That's right.
So you are openly acknowledging that the party was full of crackpots for you long.
We had a naked dude strip on stage. Yeah, it was very embarrassing. It was very embarrassing.
It wasn't just a dude though. It was a former chair, correct?
No, he was running for chair.
Oh, okay.
He was running for chair. He took that as his opportunity to strip on stage down to a thong and embarrass everyone. It was intentional. Now, to a certain extent, now I'm mad, but only to a certain point, because the rumor is it was done to keep Bill Weld out of our party and to embarrass Bill Weld. If anybody knows who Bill Weld was, he was a former governor in Massachusetts and an absolutely awful person. That's a whole nother.
Well, I mean, if he did it for that, it's still disgusting.
Still disgusting. It took like 2 points of disgustingness off the disgustingness chart. At least
2. How many points are on your chart, Angela?
Yeah, probably like 50. Yeah, so it was a 48 instead of a 50.
It was a 48 on the disgusting level. Would have been a 50, yeah. But did he have the body for it?
Let's not force me to discuss his body. Where's your HR department?
Where's you're looking at it?
HR.
You want to fill out a complaint form, you're going to have to be very specific about what you're complaining about. Do you want more harassment or less harassment? Because we can go either way with this. What do you think is going to be your biggest struggle as an individual in the position that you're in right now? What's going to hinder you the most in pushing the party forward and not losing sight of who you are in all of this?
Oh, I mean, I have a lot to juggle, right? So I'm dealing with the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I'm dealing with the Independent National Council event that's happening in Austin, Texas, in a couple of months. That's a whole nother issue coalition thing we're doing with independents and minor parties. I've got to run the LNC. I've got to manage expectations. I'm very involved in several of the committees. There's just a lot to do. Obviously, I just have a fairly newborn baby in the house. I still work a little bit part time doing litigation here and there. There's just a lot going on, and so it's really on me to use my best judgment as to how I use my time and what I prioritize and who I keep, close to me and who I rely on. We just hired some staff, so that's great. I'm looking forward to working with them and having them help to execute my vision.
Do you see this being a lifetime commitment as far as leadership, or do you see yourself as a bridge to the next chair?
Oh, I've committed to two 2-year terms, so 4 years. But I've also committed to mentoring someone to come after me because I think it's very important to try to foster and mentor the next leader. I think that there's two ways to look at this. Institutional stability comes when you have one person in charge for a long time. But the downside of that is that person can begin to take unhealthy ownership of the organization, and that's not necessarily good for it, and it doesn't always foster growth. So I want to try to hit that sweet spot where I'm in charge long enough and I trade someone else who's going to come after me to carry on my vision, but they'll also be a different person so they won't have the same blind spots.
Sum up your message to the American electorate, because I know you got to get going. Sum up your message as the chair of the Libertarian Party, National Party, to the American electorate. Why should they really take a serious look at the LP, and not so much what's in it for them, but how's it going to help them?
We are the only party who will not destroy your purchasing power with inflation or bow to the demands of the World Economic Forum. We're the only party that respects your individual rights and who wants to zealously defend them. And we're committed to doing it.
Well, I appreciate that. That was I normally ask people in political positions for a brief summation of their view, and that's why our shows go long. So I talk a lot, and then they talk a lot. So where could people find you, and where can they find the party, and what's the best way to keep track of what you guys are doing?
You want to join the LP, please go and visit lp.org. You want to find out more about our anti-war rally in DC on February 19th, you can go to rageagainstwar.com. You can find me on Twitter at Angela4LNC Chair, and if you want to see the cool stuff I'm up to, I'm on Locals, on Substack, and you can find me at patreon.com/Angela McArdle.
And we're working on getting Angela and her, is it the People's Party? Yeah. People's Party. I'm working on getting them together to talk about Rage Against the War before the event, because I would like for people who can travel to be able to make that. First department, and then I'll let you go. First federal, state level department you want abolished, and why?
Man, this is so tough.
There's so many to pick from.
I'm going to say the IRS, because I think that the American people could really use a break.
Oh, agreed. Angela, I know you got to feed the baby and probably get some rest, and because I don't know how you do it. You just had a baby 5 weeks ago.
I did. There's a whole long story about it on Patreon too. It was brutal. He's delightful, but man, did I have an ordeal.
I injured my shoulder 4 years ago, and I still whine about it. Well, I appreciate your time, and if you could pull strings, if you could pull strings, you put a bug in Dave Smith's ear. I would really like to talk to you.
I'll do it.
So, just because he had made the comment about people joining the party, and I was this close, just this close. But I'm like, no, I got to remain as neutral as possible. But I appreciate your time. And if you can pull the guys from Rage Against the War Machine together, I'd love to have you guys come on for a brief promotion of what you guys are doing, so we can get the message out to Minnesota, because there are a lot of people up here that are on the bandwagon for peace. So
You got it.
we appreciate it. You have a good night. I'll close after you leave.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would really appreciate it if you would share this out. When I do Libertarian Lowdown, it's not like when I have people on TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, or when I'm doing, like Navigating the Northwoods and things like that. I'm dealing with people who don't know me. And so I tend to not be quite as pig-headed when I'm bringing people on for Libertarian Lowdown, because I really want it to be about the message of libertarianism and why I find myself leaning that way. And the more I get to know people, the harder I can be. Travis asked the question earlier, so why the softball approach? Well, Travis, you know me. You've probably been on the show more than just about anybody else. I can't think of anybody that's been on as much as you. And the last time that I had you on, we had a blast, but there wasn't a lot of softballs. I was being pretty hard, but there's a difference in our relationship. We're friends. I would lay my life down for you, Travis, even if you're a pig-headed old farmer. But the more I get to know people, the better I get to know them, and the more that I interact with them, the more likely I am going to be hard on them. And I'll give you guys an example. Neither one of them are libertarians. I know two people that just took office as elected servants to the people of Minnesota. And what I told both of them was, I'm watching you, and there's no one that's going to hold you more accountable than I'm going to hold you accountable, because I have incredibly high expectations and standards for you as constitutional originalist candidates, or public servants in the House and the Senate here in the state of Minnesota. I'm going to be watching you. And their responses were, and I'm going to paraphrase, we know that, and we expect you to. That comes from building that relationship and getting to know them. And that's why I do a couple of different series, because I need to have that I need to be able to do that, have that freedom. And I want people to hear, different ideas. I'd love to have a DFL or a Democrat, deep dive, where we bring in lefties and we bring in people that are Democrats to sit down and talk. The problem is most of them aren't willing to talk. And that's one of the things that has impressed me with libertarians and Libertarian Party in and of itself, is they're willing to talk. They have a message. And Bull's right. They've got 50 years of a track record that they have to overcome that has been incredibly hard for them, because they have had a lot of crackpots. They just had a lot of them. And as I look around, especially at national parties, when there are no other options at the national level. None. There's nothing else out there. I had a guy today here in Minnesota claimed that he was behind Governor Walz pushing for fully funded free lunches in all Minnesota state centers of indoctrination. You would call them public schools. And I made a comment, get your fat, chubby, greasy sausage fingers out of our wallets and cut spending. And this guy came out and says, I'm a Republican and I disagree with you. We need to feed our kids. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I cannot stand the majority of the people who put Republican by their name. And there are a few exceptions in the state of Minnesota for me. There's some that I really respect. But when you look at them, their ideology and their politics aren't really Republican as we understand the Republican Party anymore. They're really not. And these people who are outliers in the Republican Party are actually more constitutional originalist, paleo-libertarian types or paleo-conservative types. And that's why I respect them. And that's why I've been looking around for somebody step up, fill the void. But fill the void with something that's got some substance, fill the void with something that's got some uh, philosophical traction behind it. And I have a massive amount of respect, Bull, for you and for what you're doing with the Constitutional Republic Party. But you got a tough row to hoe. A minimum of 10 years to be taken seriously. A minimum. And you got to hold it together for that time. And we know how hard that can be because everybody's going to be out to take you down. The GOP is going to want to take you down. The Democrats are going to want to take you down. Governmental organizations are going to want to take you down. And I want to see you succeed. But right now, I also have a desire to see people get unified, whether it's with you, Bull, or whether it's with the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party, or even the Mises Caucus that's moving into the more constitutionally minded Republicans. That's what we should be looking for. That's what we should be after. And it's got to mean something to us if we're going to make an impact, if we're going to have a change agent effect on the philosophy and the politic of our regions and our states and our at the national level. We just have to. And right now I'm looking around, I'm going, for me, at the national level, Libertarian Party far more accurately represents my views and my perspective than anything else. And that's why I'm having these libertarians on. And on that note, for those of you who do listen to libertarian podcasts, listen to political podcasts, I've got a huge announcement to make. On Friday night at 7:30, I'll have to double check the time, but Friday night, 7:30 Central or 8:30 Eastern, Reed Coverdale, host and founder of the Naturalist Capitalist podcast, Reed has agreed to come on. He is going to come on and talk about his experience as a libertarian and his views and how he ended up where he is. And he's got an inspiring story. We're talking about a guy, he's about as grassroots rocks and cows as you can get. Drives a truck and he's making an impact. And I respect him a lot. His show, Naturalist Capitalist, is the everyman version of Clint Russell's Liberty Lockdown. And Clint Russell has creeped into my top 3 of weekly listening for podcasts, along with Tom Woods and Monica Perez. And that's not to take away from all the others. I've got 10 to 15 minimum that I listen to during the week, across the board. And I listen to some people on the left. I listen to people in the Republican Party. I listen to a lot of stuff from libertarians and non-libertarians. I listen. And to get into that realm where I'm starting to notice you more, not that I'm a big deal, but that's a huge thing for me because I have a limited amount of time. And that's why I do these shows. And that's why I'm going to have Reed Coverdale on. I'm working on getting Clint Russell on. And I'm working with some others to have them on as well. I'm going to be having the people from Not a Real Libertarian podcast on here in a few weeks. I'm going on with them in a couple of weeks, and then they're going to come on and we're going to do a collab between our 2 shows. To once again talk a little bit more about what libertarian is to them and why it's important. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in for the season premiere of this. And just so you guys know, Monday night is the season premiere of TC and who should I not play softball with? Reed? Well, this show's about talking to them and hearing their story, Bull. But, I probably don't have to play softball with Reed because Reed's a pretty hard guy. But I am the premiere of season 2 of TC and Friends Monday Night Musings is coming up this coming Monday, the 16th. And if it works out, it should. I've got it worked out with a scheduling person. Dr. Brian Artis has agreed to come on the show, and we are going to talk about my view of his appearance with Stu Peters in that documentary they put out called Watch the Water. And the aftermath of Watch the Water for Brian Artis and how it affected his ability to be taken seriously going forward after that. And I can we're going to walk away friends because it's TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. But it's not going to be about all of the Koof related stuff. It's going to be about his experience filming that, what he thought he was filming, why he was filming, and what actually ended up happening. Because if you pay attention, if you're listening, folks, the thing that has happened in the United States, especially over the last 2 years, are sensationalism sells for a lot of people who have gotten into podcasting or video platforms like this. I call it a podcast, but whatever. Sensationalism sells. People really want, they want the clickbait of something really like just mind-blowingly radical coming out and just surprising them. And we see that play out over and over and over and over again with certain names, and some of them are right here in Minnesota. They want to shock you. They don't want the material in and of itself to cause you to think. They want you to be shocked by the thing they're proposing, no matter how radical or how crazy it might be. And they'll throw things out there just to drive the sensationalism. And the last thing we need is sensationalism. Look, I can get dramatic, I can be emotional, I can get angry, but there's a difference between that and play acting the sensationalism. I think that's very detrimental to those of us who are liberty-minded, and it actually ends up hurting a lot of people, is what it does. And that's why I think this conversation on Monday night is going to be really important. So that's the housekeeping. I really appreciate everybody that watched. For those of you who have friends who don't know who the Libertarians are or have a very negative view of libertarianism as a party, please share this out with them. Let them listen to it so that they can hear, like, all right, here's a reasonable approach. Not everybody's going to agree with them, but we need to get people to stop thinking that there's only two options and really one option in the United States. We have to get people to start thinking about other options, whether it be the Libertarian Party at the local level or the national level, or whether it be the Constitutional Republic Party, whatever the case might be. We have got to get people to start looking around. The uniparty system is killing us. It's destroying our republic. Well, what's left of it. Abraham Lincoln went a long ways to completely destroying the republic. No, I don't like him. I know he's a hero to everybody, but I don't like him. But so push this out. Make sure people see it, and make sure they ask questions. And tell them to ask questions right here, or they can send me an email, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. I'd love to hear feedback or comment on the video. So like, comment, and share. And my friends, as always, until next time, fight for your freedom is yours. Fight for your liberty. It belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems
the target. You are authorized to fire at